All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's 5 o'clock here in Saudi Arabia. Me and Richard actually surprised the same time zone. I'm traveling currently in Saudi, heading back, inshallah, soon back home, Dallas. But in the meantime, I'm sharing the same time zone, which is fun. And today's webinar is a fascinating discussion. And I'm excited to get into it. It's really about discovering the importance of wellness beyond just the kind of the health part of things. It's more like discovering the importance of wellness to deal with a lot of the challenges that of course, a lot of us probably face these days. I'm sure all of you have been feeling a bit of the stress of the onslaught of whether it's macro stresses like inflation, cost of living is rising, the back to office stresses, or just micro stresses in your life, feeling overwhelmed, feeling agitated, stressed out, and then the impact that has on your life, whether you're feeling forgetful, disorganized, sometimes random aches and pains, low energy, and then even not be able to sleep. So the question is, and we wanted to have a discussion with Richard, was more like understanding the root causes of this and why wellness is so essential and not just a luxury for us. And inshallah, towards the end of the session, we'll also talk about his upcoming Wellness Masterclass that is starting this Sunday. But first, let us introduce Richard. Richard is an old friend and someone I met during the COVID era. Oh, it's still in the COVID era, I'm not sure. During the COVID era, he was actually my personal health coach and has made tremendous impact myself, on my parents, on many people's lives. And he has been a friend of Productive Muslim Company. He has done a number of programs with us, including our 6-week Wellness Masterclass. He's somebody who's got all the certifications you can imagine that is needed to be someone, and not just it's hard to put it's not a fitness guy. It's more like a holistic wellness, health. I mean, mashallah, the way, if you look at just his bio, you'll know that he has done incredible amount of certifications, understanding the kind of the physical side of things. And what I love of Richard is that he's connecting it to his spiritual side, to our spiritual side, to our deen and Islam. He's been Muslim for over 30 years, and he's been doing that link for us, connecting what he's learning from all the certifications to our faith, to the tradition, to the Sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and offering us literally the crux and the best of his knowledge in a platter for us. So Richard, always great to have you. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much, brother. Great to be here with you again. And fun fact, we went to the same school, not the same time, but I always like to tell people that when you're introducing our background together, it's still, I always love that we went to the same school, although very different years.
Yeah, that's true. It's so true. It's fine. Like, imagine the people you meet in life. So the way we got to do this, guys. So first one, double check. If you're listening in, please feel free. There's 2 ways you can ask questions in this forum. You can either post it inside the Q&A box. This is a webinar, not a meeting, so it's a slightly different format. So you can you can put it in the Q&A box, or you can type straight in the chat. But the way this is going to work is going to be a discussion between me and Richard. And I'll be trying to represent you, the audience. So you guys need to help me here and kind of talk about the idea of stress affecting our health and why we need to really think about stress and health. So let's start off with the first question. Normally, when we think about stress, we normally think of it as a mental thing or as something you just feel. We don't normally associate it with physical impact, or we don't feel the need of take care of our physical needs in order to deal with stress. If you can just make the connection between stress and physical health and where those two meet.
Yeah, so I think, it's funny, earlier you were saying I'm not a fitness guy, and it's true, but the comment itself, it kind of is part of your question that you're asking now, in that we tend to, in modern times, maybe, I guess, I don't know if we always did, but in modern times, definitely people tend to compartmentalize all aspects of our holistic health and wellness, or our health and wellness. The holistic part is what's important. So I've been, as I've been doing on recently on, for instance, the Instagram stories, and I've even changed my definition of wellness in this last year. When I go in to do my my seminars or my coaching, it's a journey, right? So it's, instead of it having this sort of this idea, this being this outcome, it's a lifelong process, which I think really fits into our spiritual paradigm. It's not like we ever arrive at any place we're like, oh, I'm perfect, you know, it's in any way, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally, etc. So that journey requires a skill set. It requires us to be able to be ready to address the stresses of our life. And that requires resilience. A lot of people hear about resilience, and we're going to talk about that, I'm sure, today. But resilience is sort of just the capacity to prepare for, to recover from, to adapt to the stresses that will happen to us. Now, that's what science is saying. Our Deen says that Allah is going to test us, right? So the stress definition, if we want to kind of start off with that as well, stress, the simplest way I've ever heard it is that it's anything that knocks us out of homeostasis. So balance, right? Homeostasis, big word for balance. Balance is what our body, Allah designed us to, our entire entity to struggle for all day long, 24/7, for our entire life. Our body's fighting for balance. So anything that knocks us out of balance is a stressor. And of course, in that, there's good and bad stressors, right? There's eustress and distress is what they call it. So there's bad stressors and there's good stressors. And we actually need stress in order to be optimally healthy. So, but we also need the shift back. We need the balance. So I keep saying we're a people of balance. Like we're told to be balanced in hadith traditions, and we're told to not overdo certain lifestyle things that we're supposed to do, or ibadah things that we're supposed to do, but we're also supposed to, let's say, recover from that, right? So we can talk about it spiritually. We can talk about it mentally, mental stress, and there's plenty of that. It's getting more and more difficult these days, as you kind of alluded to. But then, what are we doing to, as I say, work in, right? So we're always working out. Our brain's going. We're giving our mental processes up to so many things, and putting our attention and our worry to so many things, mostly dunya things, which I want to talk about that in a moment. But how are we working in, where we turn inward and go silent? And whether it's in our tradition, or whether even it's astounding in modern medical science, is like how much of the answer lies in the silence. Like when we turn inward, go into the silence, breathe, listen to our heart, listen to the intuition that Allah has given us, and learn to listen to it better. That's another part of the process. So yeah, physically, we're eating our stressors. We're not moving enough. We're moving too much. We're using movement in order to mask stressors that we're not dealing with. We're living around a bunch of environmental toxins, where we got electromagnetic frequencies assaulting us. We've got a pandemic. We've got all types of reasons to be physically stressed too. But we need to have the skill set to repair, restore that as well. And on and on and on. So it's like a stress bucket, as I always say, that when they teach about stress in my industry, it's just like, envision a bucket. That's your stress bucket. How much stress is going in that bucket? Now we can talk about all the different things that I just mentioned, and you mentioned, and just imagine how much is accumulating. Stressors going into the bucket more than ever, and for some reason more than ever as well, most human beings have gotten away from our God-given capacity to prepare for, recover from, and adapt in the face of it more than we ever have, it seems, because human beings definitely have the ability to increase their capacity. And that's what we're doing through physical, right? So through the paradigm that I teach, you know, the mind work, the body work, the breath work, our relationship with food, so that we mitigate the stressors we're bringing into our body, and sleep, you know, prioritizing the restoration that we need. If you don't do those things, you reduce your fighting chance to be resilient in the face of all that we're dealing with.
Beautiful. So let me see, summarize and make the key points here. So number one, our body's designed to reach a state of balance, and or in Arabic mizan, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the mizan, the idea of balance, and stress is anything that knocks out of that balance, whether physically, mentally, even spiritually. And there are so many stresses around us. Again, you can talk good stress, bad stress. There's so many stresses around us that sometimes we overwhelm our stress buckets, and unless we take and actually deal and work through those stresses and tackle those stresses through different spiritual practices, mental practices, physical practices, as you mentioned, we have a very little fighting chance to have the resilience to deal with them. And I think, I'm sure that resonates with a lot of people. I'm sure all of us here have felt that, that stress that you feel in your body. And when things just get overwhelming and things get to a point where you're like, I'm not sure I can handle this, right? Even your breath sort of starts to get shallower, right? Because you're like, kind of like you're perplexing, you're anxious. And I guess a lot of us, we probably maybe think that, okay, I need to just deal with this maybe on a spiritual level. I should make dua and just make the wudu and inshallah things work out. But what you're saying is we need to have the physical tools to also handle and deal with that stress. Can you talk about some of those physical tools, techniques that help us absorb and de-stress and give us a fighting chance, basically?
Yeah. It's what's going to also be maybe counterintuitive, but a lot of things in life are counterintuitive, which keeps it very interesting, right? Is that some of it is by safely dosing ourselves with stressors. So it's which a lot of people, again, more than ever, we live in a time right now. You're going to hear me say more than ever. Like, I'm not making this up. Like, human beings more than ever are destroying our planet. Human beings more than ever are destroying our internal environment. Human beings more than ever have lost their memory on how to eat right, how to move right, how to sleep right, how to commune right with each other. It's happening. We've been hijacked more than ever. It's always been a problem, right? But we are up against modern people, and certainly modern Muslims are up against a whole new just wave of problems. And so one of them is our aversion and our complete avoidance of discomfort, right? So it's coming up all over. There are new books about it. There are all types of videos you can watch about it, and there's a lot of great science about it. But like, it appears that we are designed to embrace discomfort, not run from it. And a lot of the discomfort has also been not for the main purpose of making us uncomfortable necessarily, but it's a byproduct, right? So for instance, hormesis or hormetic stressors, which hormetic stress is a type of stress that in a safe dose is supposed to make us stronger and more resilient. And there's so many different ways to go about that. Fasting is probably the most well-known hormetic stressor. Well, sorry, exercise is the most well-known hormetic stressor. So exercise is a stressor. We break ourselves, we repair ourselves, right? We break ourselves down, we repair ourselves back stronger. Fasting, same thing. Not only does our digestive system get a little bit of a break, but also it tells our biological systems we're not getting food. So we need to pivot now and do something different. And that's something different, without going into the deep science of metabolic flexibility and autophagy and all that. That's something different, makes us, our entire entity, stronger and healthier. Embracing the discomfort of extreme temperatures. I know that this is such people really hate when I talk about this. I get it here in Saudi Arabia a lot. I go into corporations and I'm like, hey, I need you all to take a morning walk before eating. In this weather, And it's always the response. So, but yeah, and then I'm like, well, what did people do before air conditioning and electricity? The response is, oh, it wasn't as hot then, which is not true. I can open up websites and you can show, I mean, maybe it was a degree different, but oftentimes it wasn't. So nevertheless, human beings are designed to get outside, move from one place to another, be hot, be cold. I'm not talking about dangerous levels, but to sit in our homes, and the key word, sit, to sit in our homes in perfectly temperature controlled environments all day long, wondering and eating food that's already been processed for us, right? Like refined, so our digestive system doesn't really have to work very hard, okay? And wondering what sort of mental work we can do to feel better. Like, how can I think differently about the way I feel right now while I'm sitting fully comfortable, not stressing my body in the way that I'm, as a species, designed, that Allah designed me to be, right? So I hope, I hope I'm not losing people, but I don't want to scare anyone here. But, it's so giving ourselves a little bit of extra stress, right? In small, safe, dose-dependent, safe doses. As well as this one's not going to be the scary one, but answering your question, getting back to our breath. I always like to say, I said before that it's dunya, the dunya is what stresses us, right? So, which I don't think anybody's going to refute that. Although spiritual stress is real. I mentioned this before, like if somebody, and I think this is a great thing to really reflect on. If somebody is living in a way that is out of alignment with what they believe and what their values are, which let's all be honest. We all do that. It's called being human. It's called sinning, which Allah tells us we're going to do in some form or another, but you struggle against it. You struggle against yourself, but that's a place of stress. It should be like, you should be a little bit like spiritually stressed out because of that, right? Because of that reality, that model that we've been set up in. And, we, through turning to Allah and He turns to us, alhamdulillah, we have the right way to approach that, and we should be actively doing it in the same way that we should be actively working our way through our other stressors that I was just talking about. But getting back to what I was saying, so the dunya is what stresses us. Everything that we're talking about is mostly dunya. It's all dunya related except for the spiritual stressor part, and reconnecting constantly to our, I'm going to use the word spirit, through our breath is like what every tradition talks about. Ancient traditions of all sorts and ancient philosophies of all sorts, and even in the Islamic tradition. And the proof to me, besides the fact that when we recite Quran 100% properly, slowly, deliberately recite Quran, we are breathing in a way that relaxes the nervous system. That's not why we do it, but alhamdulillah, we get the benefits without needing to know why, right? Inshallah, we hear and we obey, right? But in English, as I've said to the productive Muslim community before, in English, spirit and breath come from the same root words: spirit, respirate, inspire, expiration. So spirit and respiration come from the same word. And in Arabic, nafs and nafas, interestingly, somehow, subhanAllah, somehow they come from the same word. Now I know Allah breathed the ruh into us. So we, either way, however we want to look at it, the first thing that started in our creation is breath. We were breathed into, and that's how we began. And if you really, first of all, I think people should really reflect on what that means, right? It's a beautiful thing to think about what that means, what our breath is. It's our life force. Right? It's the life force Allah breathed into us. And then we know that if we were to just stop and learn to breathe properly again, because most of us don't mechanically breathe properly, and take some time to take a few deep breaths before we eat, before we sleep, before we begin talking, before we get fired up and react in a way that we don't want to. And the Prophet ﷺ told us to sit down and to lay down. We know that these things are what we're told to do, but we also can assume he didn't have a breathing imbalance because it's a modern man problem. So sitting down taking some deep breaths, laying down, taking some deep breaths as a practice before we become reactive, and also to down-regulate our stress chemicals before we eat, before we actually say the words of shukr that we're about to say, before we eat or before we do anything, not just making it a habit, we just say it because we were taught to say it. No, take a few deep breaths, always come back to the breath. The breath is our anchor. It was given to us so that we can constantly recenter ourselves with our spirit.
Beautiful, mashallah. So I hear two ideas here. So you're saying we live in the modern world and there's all these stresses on ourselves. The stresses in the environment, the stresses in the news, the stresses in our food. But at the same time, you're also saying that we're not stressing ourselves enough, whether it's, it's too hot, whether it's temperature controlled environments, whether it's not putting stress with fasting. How do you know which stress to pursue, which not to pursue? If that makes sense.
Yeah, good question. It's going to be, I'm sorry for my long answers, but so first of all, if we were to just say, you know what, I'm going to do my absolute best to not do anything other than follow everything that is known in the Islamic tradition. That's all I'm going to do. Then we would have the answer. And I mean that. Like, I know some people, it's like, you were kind of saying before, like sometimes somebody's dealing with something really difficult and they're told, make dua and it just doesn't feel like enough for them. Read the Quran. It doesn't feel like enough for them to get out of whatever traumatic situation they're experiencing. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all of a sudden the most valid, effective form of fasting is the 5-2 method. So Western science is telling everyone, guess what? In like the 16-8 and the 14-10 and the 24-hour and the one meal a day all the time and blah, blah, blah. These are okay, but it turns out that when you take a bunch of people who did that up against, and there's a lot of studies now. This is actually last week they came out with some new results on this. You take the same people, same calorie amounts, and that were doing more aggressive, like 16-8 style fasts, and then you put them up against a 5-2 group. Like, that's what they call it, right? It's a non-Muslim thing. It's an American study or whatever. A 5-2 thing, right? Which is 2 times a week, you reduce your calories to 25% of your normal amount. In other words, it's like you've had one meal, right? And this group, over this amount of time, both accounting same calories, same exercise protocols. The 5-2 group lost more body fat and all of their biomarkers improved, cholesterol, blood sugar, etc. Right? In the 5-2. Again, I know we are not told to fast so that we can be better looking and so that we can control our chronic illnesses. But I know there's a hadith that says fast and you'll be healthy. Some people say it's daif, but whatever. Regardless, we were told what to do. Here's the stressor. Here's how to do it. Not told what to do, recommended. It's a sunnah. Here's the sunnah. Here's the practice you could do. It's enough, right? There's one. 2. I always bring up in the Islamic context. Some people are like, well, I just sit around, I don't work out because, well, the sunnah is to swim and ride horses and shoot arrows, and I live in the middle of an urban dwelling and none of that's happening, so I guess I'm just not going to move. Okay, so it's what's the hikmah behind what we were told to do, and how can we mimic that now, right? So is it that we're supposed to be sedentary? Definitely not. Were we told that people waste 2 things, their health and their free time? We definitely were. Right? So did the Prophet ﷺ grapple with other humans, which is the most intense thing one could ever do, in my opinion? Yes, maybe intense and not dangerous for the most part, right? Yes, he did. Bows. We're not talking about going to a range at a theme park and just shooting at a target. We're talking about people who know how to trail targets, crouch down, fight other people in wars while they're pulling back on a bow that has a 50 to 70 pound draw strength. I mean, it's what they were doing is nothing like what we were doing, right? Or what we're doing when it comes to our well, some people might be doing some pretty good archery, but I'm talking about like just target practice, right? Swimming, you know, it's good for your safety. It's good to know how to swim, but you got to swim hard if you want to get fitness out of it. That's just, you can't just be like, go wade out there, right? Riding horses is an intense sport. So if you're not going to ride horses, which I'm not, right? I don't have it's not a privilege I have, a luxury I have right now in my life. So what does it require to ride a horse? It requires balance. It requires leg strength. It requires core strength. It requires there's some strength that it requires, right? So using your body, you can sometimes mimic these things, right? You can mimic them. If you don't like to go to the gym, do it at home. There are ways. That's what I teach in the masterclass, right? But everybody, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, when we go to the gym these days, we're mimicking the ways of our predecessors. Nobody had to go to the gym, and yet you go to even some of the most, off the beaten track places on the earth today, and they got great muscle tone and no body fat, and they're looking strong as ever, and they're not going to the gym, right? So we need to move. We need to be careful, though, to your question, if we are super stressed and we have not been, we've arrived at a place. We're in our 30s, we're in our 40s, whatever, even our 20s. Why wait, by the way? Okay. If we're at a place where our stressors have become overwhelming, and then we're like, oh, I heard I should work out, and we go listen to some messages online or even to some personal trainers, and they tell you, you know what the best thing you can do is a bunch of cardio. Here's the treadmill, hit it. Absolutely not. And I always say it, and it blows their mind when I say it. I'm going to say it right here. The worst way to get fit and healthy is by running. Right? Running mimics war. Running mimics stress. Running mimics being chased. I'm not saying I don't do it, but what do we do on days of peace? What did our predecessors do on days of peace? We use our body functionally, slowly, I always use pulling the water out of the well, chopping the tree, carrying something, picking up children, picking up some mud bricks and building our community, and maybe sprinting after a rabbit, sprinting after an animal and putting it on our back and loading it up. These are the things that we do in times of peace. But everybody is being told to go mimic conflict, war, and stress. Why? Because it's fast. It's a fast way to lose body fat, which is what everybody's trying to get people to do. It's the quickest way to do it, but it's the best way to also increase stress chemicals. And when you stop, which is the recommendation for fitness in general, like pick something you're going to do forever, because when you stop, your body will come right back to where you don't want it to go. It's an adaptation thing. So small doses, small, short doses of functional movement, mimicking what we're supposed to do by sitting and standing and sitting and standing. It's also known as squatting. Okay. And pushing and pulling and hinging and rotating, using our body the way that Allah designed our body to move every day. Walking every day. A day without walking, if anyone doesn't take a walk every day, that's a very unusual day for a human being. From a standpoint of our nervous system and our hormones and our neurotransmitters that are produced by walking. So we want to move low intensity a lot. We want to move a couple times a week. We want to move our bodies, short doses, using functional movement patterns. Occasionally, if you feel like exploding into sprints and runs and things like that, go for it, but it's not essential. And that will calm your nervous system. When you start to move your body, the nervous system is being told what? The war must be over. Like now we're rebuilding, everything's good. We're using our large muscles of our legs to do something, do things slowly and rebuild. So there's that, the fasting, extreme temperatures. Go to a sauna if you've got access to one. I have an ice vest that I put on. Just end your showers with here in Saudi Arabia right now, if I tried to end my shower with a cold blast, it would never happen. I'd have to wait till December. But, end your shower with a cold blast and control your gasp response, because that's when you've arrived. If you can turn on the cold and not go, then you know that your nervous system has become more resilient. And the evidence shows that somebody who can, in the face of heat and cold, can control their breath and their response has greater emotional control. I will not be asking the students of the masterclass to do that, though.
Well, why not? That's part of the assignments. Get a cold shower. No, I love that. I mean, I think it's very powerful. And you mentioned 3 very, very practical ways where we can use our bodies to create some good stress to help us deal with these sort of macro stresses, stress we get in life. One is like the fasting. Another one is you said the breathing. The third one you said is to movement, and also to kind of like create those kind of with this where there's a cold shower, something to kind of create that stress that helps you deal with the emotional imbalances of the macro stresses. I will say that one of the fascinating things I've come across recently in sort of productivity space is the idea of how just fasting Mondays and Thursdays, it kind of sort of resets your week. You find that when you fast Monday, your Tuesday and your Friday are really productive. It's something about how it kind of resets your week. And that's one thing I mean, people talk about how to maintain consistency. Some having those 2 reset days of fasting can be very, very powerful. Let's take some questions from the audience. It's questions Q&A here, inshallah. So I want to start with Alwiya's Bafagi's question. How do we know how much stress is too much stress? So, how much stress should we allow ourselves to go through if you're able to control those stresses, if that makes any sense?
Yeah. So it's a great question. So there's really, for me, the 2 best ways are either listening to our own body, which I'll explain more what I mean about that in a second, or using, I don't know, Mohammed, if you're wearing yours, I assume you are, using devices that measure heart rate variability, which is basically the metric that is measuring stress these days. From a nervous system standpoint. So like when we're at heart rate variability, for those who don't know, is not heart rate. So heart rate is how many beats your heart takes in a minute, but our hearts are not like metronomes. So it's not like tick tock, like 60 beats per minute. It varies by milliseconds. And that millisecond variation is known as heart rate variability, which fascinatingly enough, the medical industry has known about for 100 years. And we're just hearing about it. They kind of knew about it, but we weren't being told that what's going on with those variations tells you what's going on in your nervous system, how well recovered you are, how stressed you are. And this is impacted by how you breathe, a bad night of sleep, a good night of sleep. How do you exercise? You don't, you're probably going to have stress. Why? I should have mentioned this before, but before I go on with the answer, like somebody who doesn't exercise, the body, the ancient wisdom in our body will give us the gift of stress chemicals because, well, the theory is that our body is giving you that because you are not moving, therefore you are a weak link in our community. You are not going to be able to help us fight alongside us when we get attacked, et cetera, et cetera. So a person who sits all day, the body gives you this beautiful gift of stress chemicals. Here, take this, get up. And most people are like, oh, why do I feel so stressed and anxious? Definitely exercise will be the last thing in their mind. The first thing in their mind is, what's going to make me feel better? Nice, high glycemic, refined carbohydrates and stuff like that that'll make you jolt up. And it does. But then now you've added another stressor onto it. But anyways, I digress. So heart rate variability is a good way to test. There are many devices that do it. You will know. And it's going to be some days you're going to be not well recovered and some days you're going to be recovered. And you start to notice trends like what type of foods set me off? What type of eating times? Oh, late eating. I always have stressed out nervous system the next day. A bad night of sleep where I stayed up and hung out with friends. Socialization is good, but how we got to be responsible too. Just because we can stay up till Fajr on the weekend doesn't mean that we should. Anyways, and so you can do it by technology if you want to look at heart rate variability. But otherwise, the best thing that I can tell anyone who wants to know if they have too much stress going on in their life, one, let's take it chronologically. Kind of when you wake up in the morning, more often than not, do you wake up feeling pretty good, like where you open your eyes and you're like, what, like, yeah, I feel like I just had some pretty restorative sleep. I don't feel like I want to keep hitting the snooze button and stay in bed. My eyes don't feel heavy. I feel pretty energized. I can tell my brain, everybody knows what it feels like. I can tell my brain today is a little bit more clear right now. And I just feel like I have the energy to get up and seize the morning. That is how we're supposed to wake up. That's how human beings who sleep consistently from a time standpoint, right? Going to bed and waking up more or less at the same time. That's how they feel. That's how my grandparents felt. One of them still alive, but that's how I remember. My grandfather would eat dinner at 6 p.m. He'd be in bed by 8:30, 9 o'clock. He would wake up at 4 a.m. and he was like always ready to go. This is a thing with that generation. You know what I'm saying? But we wonder why, we're stressed, and sleep is a big part of it. So when you feel like you don't feel good in the morning, ready to go, that's a sign of stress. If you have bloating, gas, cramping, heartburn, that's a sign of stress. Dietary stress or mental stress, because the gut-brain connection is real. Skin rashes, skin issues, things like that can be a sign of a stressor, right? The immune system, also, like the immune system, the way it reacts and certain things that manifest when people's immune systems start to kind of become hyperactive, right? So there's some health issues related to that I don't want to get into right now, but that would be a sign. Brain fog. Brain fog is not normal. Don't settle for it. If anybody has brain fog on a regular basis, something's wrong. It's not that you're flawed. You're doing something that's wearing you down. Your stress bucket is full. I could go on with this, but I think you get the point. There are these very sort of easy to know signs. Unwanted weight gain, unwanted weight loss. There's another one. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
That's great. No, mashallah. Yeah, and again, the reason we're bringing this up, again, I want to make sure everyone connected to the purpose of this. It's to recognize how, like, your body's kind of like, it's incredible how it tells you when the bucket is full, when stress bucket is full. At the same time, how much there are things you can do. There are things you can take control of, whether it's through fasting, whether it's through breathing, whether it's through exposing yourself to some kind of stresses like exercise and cold showers, that actually helps you deal with stress. So which sometimes feels, and we always think about exercise as like weight gain, weight loss, or building muscles, or it's like a nice thing to do when I have time, versus seeing it as essential for our well-being, essential for us being the best version of ourselves, essential for us to grow and to deal with family and work and all those sorts of things. So that's the link we're trying to make here. That's the link that Richard is put in the spotlight on, because a lot of times we think wellness or health is like about weight gain, weight loss, and versus building muscles or looking good, versus recognizing that it is an incredible, powerful, pillar of us actually functioning in this world and dealing with the onslaught of stresses that come our way. Literally, think about just the COVID pandemic. Think about, I'm sure now you're hearing about inflation, rising costs, people losing their jobs. Like, there's always this thing in the back of your mind, and it's eating at you. It's eating at you. Now, if you don't have the tools to deal with it through movement, through sleep, through exercise, through breathing, it gets overwhelming. And then you get those, and then you have your body's reacting as well as your mind is reacting, and that's where the challenge is. I'm hoping that everyone's able to see that link and through what you're sharing right now so far. So a couple more questions, and then we'll jump into kind of sharing more about the some of the, if those want to go deeper and learn more about this in a much more structured way, because I know there's a lot of ideas here today, but sometimes it's important to recognize. I hope that this link is clear for everyone, inshallah. So Sana asking, how do I return to homeostasis when my body is in a constant state of stress? It seems like it always goes back to this just no matter what I do. So
may Allah give you healing and make it easier for you. But I don't know your exact circumstance. So to answer, I have to answer a little bit broadly or even vaguely to some degree, because I don't know what's causing you. When you say your body's constantly under stress, or that even you're constantly under stress, it would seem to be that it's something other than what we've kind of talked about today, like something potentially happening that is doing that, causing you to swing in the direction of stress. I still, even modern psychology is changing, right? So like, for instance, the old model of, the old model of getting to root cause all the time, like looking at what's the root and how do I get out of that? How do I do a mental practice to resolve that trauma is still valid in some cases, of course, but you're starting to see, for instance, like through positive psychology, you're starting to see that like in medical schools and universities where they teach psychology, like positive psychology is starting to kind of win in many ways, where people focus on, what's right, what's going right. That's the mind work, like the reframing, right? Making sure that we have that in our tradition, of course, practicing shukr, like the having an active shukr practice, right? Don't make shukr a future event, right? Like you can't ever, if we wait till, the if then model, like if this happens, I'll be good, then if this happens, then I'll be in a place where I can practice gratitude. It has to happen first. It has to precede. And it's hard. I know it's hard for people to get to that, but it's powerful. Through neuroplasticity, we can rewire our brains with gratitude work, with compassion work, even with forgiveness. It's also an amazing thing. Like you're starting to hear in the clinical psychology, the power of forgiveness. Anyways, so this type of stuff, right, from a standpoint of the mind work, but that industry is also more and more, thank God, taking it into the body. So our body has the power. Human beings' resilience is much more in the body than we used to think. In fact, if you look up, and I encourage you to look up, the Heart Math Institute. The Heart Math Institute has been doing amazing, scientifically validated studies on the signals that go upward and the signals that go downward, mind to body, body to mind. And it turns out, subhanAllah, there's more signals that go from the heart to the mind than from the mind to the heart. There's more signals that go from the gut upward than you can imagine, right? And apparently more than brain down to the gut. So our gut is always informing our brain. Our heart is always informing our brain in ways that'll sound like magic, sound like hocus pocus to you. Go look it up. It's incredible. So the reason I'm saying this is don't underestimate the power of your body to get you out of that stress cycle. You need to tell your brain, your mind, your subconscious, your nervous system that things are safe. Unless you're not safe. If you're not safe, then obviously that's a different story. But if you're safe, like you're not in danger, you're not under attack, then your body is what's going to show your mind that. And I know it's very primal. I don't know what else to call it. Okay. So that is the way I'm going to answer that without knowing more of your circumstance.
MashaAllah. Yeah. I mean, reflecting back, a lot of times whenever I feel stressed out, like I know if I need to go for a run, I need to move, I need to go cycling, like I need to do some squats. It sounds so counterintuitive, but it just makes a huge impact.
Or breathe.
Oh, breathe. Oh, yes. Breathe is beautiful. Absolutely. That definitely makes a huge difference. And I think like in summer, like last night, I was a bit stressed out before bed, and I realized some just breathing exercises can really help to calm myself down. A couple of questions here. So, question from Larissa: how curious how to increase focus and energy when we are under stress? So, is that the same thing like going through? Let's say you're under stress. You need to get work done. You still have to go do things that get done. It's kind of linked to productivity as well. How do you increase focus and energy when you're under stress?
Like right then and there that day?
Yeah.
Is that the question? I'm sorry to respond with caffeine, but I'm going to. No. Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah. I'm kind of not kidding. So it's not something you want to, that's sort of a form of medicating in a way that I wouldn't recommend as a lifestyle, but certainly for those who do handle caffeine well. And that's a key thing, handle it well. Some people don't, some people do. I've tested genetically that I do, some people don't. But yeah, if I wake up, which I do frequently, especially these days with the workload that's going on, like I wake up feeling beat. I wake up feeling anxious because I'm beat. And now I've got to go up in front of a bunch of people and I got to be my best self. I mean, it's not easy, right? So what I do, I exercise, and it's Mohammed runs, and that's it. I do sometimes, like instead of running, I'll do high intensity interval training for like 8 minutes, which is, you know, similar. It's intense stuff. It's just a different modality. But still, my go-to is resistance training. So yes, I will. I mean, I do this. It's become a lifestyle, right? So this is my comfort place. So everybody needs to have that. But your comfort place, this is a key point. Your comfort place shouldn't be something that, inshallah, one day, for anybody who has a place of comfort, a place of safety that's adding on to the stress, because we, you know, for instance, it's eating, a certain type of eating that we gravitate towards, or other, I'll call risky behaviors in order to get out of our stress. Obviously, that would be something we want to change and find a new, I don't want to use the word addiction, but find a new addiction, you know? And so for me, when I go downstairs, if I don't have time, which every day, time, like it doesn't matter. There's not a day in my life I don't start my day with a morning walk. So after Salah, if I'm in a place in Saudi Arabia where I can walk to the masjid, great. If I'm not, then still after Salah, there's going to be at least a 15 to 20 minute walk, early morning. And that is free medicine. It's like magic what happens to your body when you go for a morning walk. And it's not a theory, what the understanding is that when you walk, we produce serotonin. Walking produces serotonin. Serotonin is our feel-good, the feel-good neurotransmitter. So when you go outside, Allah has designed us to get a feel-good chemical when we move our legs. SubhanAllah, like go outside, take a walk, see what happens. It may just be the answer you're looking for.
I don't know, powerful stuff. And again, sometimes some of these things you think it sounds too simple to be true, but it does work. It does work. And I'm hoping that the key message everyone gets from this webinar so far is, number one, recognize that the stress does impact your physical health and your spiritual health, and of course your mental health. Number two, sometimes there's, you know, out of us trying to get out of stress, we actually create more stress for ourselves, whether it's like eating stress, you know, stress eating, or not sleeping well, or not taking care of ourselves physically, not exercising. So we create even more stress in our body. Number three, the idea of trying to do certain practices. And I love the word practice versus just exercise. Certain practices that help you mitigate and reduce stress in life, whether it's fasting, whether it's walking, whether it's breathing, whether it's cold showers, certain practices that actually help you build your physical capacity to deal with the stresses in life. Those are some of the key messages here, inshallah ta'ala. Now, I think at this point in time, because of time, I want to make sure that we also have some time to answer any questions about the Wellness Masterclass that's starting this Sunday. For those of you who are not aware, Richard Jordan runs a very unique program for the productive Muslim community. It's not your typical sort of wellness program or health program. It's a program that connects our tradition, what I call our fitra lifestyle, this lifestyle taught by a prophet, to the latest science in health and wellness in a way that's very practical, in a way that's very doable, in a way that's also over a period of time, right? It's not about just doing 1 or 2 webinars or attending a course. It's a live cohort-based course, meaning you're going to enter this program as a cohort with a group of other students. You're going to attend these sessions live with Richard, and he's going to take you on a journey. And it is a full-week journey. So the way this works is that you will, actually I'll let Richard go talk to you about it, but that is that you have 8 sessions. 4 of them, there'll be 1 teaching session and 1 working session per week. Maybe Richard, if you can explain what you'll cover each week so that people understand what it is and why it's important to learn the stuff.
Yeah. So in the first week, we're going to go through the holistic paradigm. I have to really drive the point home so that, as I said earlier, we don't compartmentalize our health and wellness. Like, we cannot only think our way to health. We cannot only sleep our way to health. We cannot only exercise our way to health. We cannot only eat our way to health. We cannot only breathe our way to health, right? We have been designed in a way that we need all of these to work well as a system for us to achieve optimal health and balance in our life. And that's why you see in the working session, so on Sundays, we'll have the main class, and then on Wednesdays, we'll have the working session where we implement a lot of the things that we're learning. And it's the homeostasis, achieving that balance and understanding breath is our superpower, and how prayer, gratitude, compassion, visualization, intentioning, forgiveness, and all those things can be coupled with our breath in a way that really, and we'll demonstrate it. I'm going to make sure that people reverse their inverted breathing pattern, because we know that somewhere between 80% of the entire world today has reversed the way that we're supposed to breathe. When we inhale, the belly and ribs move the wrong direction. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. So we're going to fix that, and we're going to learn how to strategically breathe. How do you breathe when you want to balance your nervous system? There's a way to do that. How do you breathe when you want to go to sleep? There's a way to do that. How do you breathe when you want to go charge into action in your sport or whatever, like breath of fire, warrior breathing type of stuff? You can do that too. So we can excite both branches of our nervous system, the fight or flight or the rest and digest. Most people live in a way all day long that excites the fight or flight. So we're going to get out of that. Week 2, we're going to go into movement right away. For those who were in the other master classes, we did movement a little bit later, but I want to get started on movement. Basically going into the Sunnah movement lifestyle. Earlier I was talking about that, and I forgot to bring up the Prophet's walking style, which is, again, enough. It's almost enough for us to be baseline healthy if we were to just mimic that. Anyways, posture and how it relates to psychology, it's very important. I call it the last frontier. Movement's one of the last frontiers for our health optimization. One of the only things that's not tampered with and contaminated and polluted and destroyed by some external industry is our ability to move our body. So we need to turn to it. And I'm going to teach ways to do this without a gym being required. And I'm help everybody organize and stabilize their body so that it's all done safely, and so that life movement's done safely. Working out, if it doesn't translate into how you're living, this is where we need to bridge that. You go to the gym and people learn to do all these things, but then they go to pick up a laundry basket and it's all wrong, and then they hurt themselves and tweak something. And we don't need to have that. So we're gonna organize and stabilize the body, inshallah, so that we live our life pain-free. Then we're gonna go into circadian rhythms. Sleep, the free medicine and greatest medicine that we have available to us, really. Rhythms are important here. We're going to talk about the circadian rhythms of the 24-hour clock that every living creature is basically tied to. It's a hormonal story. The barakah of the morning, we know this, and we're going to talk about why. Sleep hygiene, behaviors, habits, and practices that are conducive to sleeping well on a regular basis. We're going to go through all those and really kind of find, we're not going to be able to do all of them, each one of us, right? Because of our life and circumstance. But if we pick a few of them that we're ready, willing, and able to do, can really help us to get much greater quality sleep and be mentally and physically repaired. And I'm going to talk a little in the working session about biohacking and habit stacking. These are, the biohacker industry is a little bit strange sometimes, but I have, through my own learning and my own practices, I have learned some pretty good biohacks to help sleep better and deal with the things that we're going to deal with. Sometimes you need a little bit of a hack, right? Instead of perfect life rhythms all day long, every day. And then the last week, we're going to get into nutrition. I always say that for last so that I can run and hide afterwards. No, I'm kidding. No, because food is it's a sensitive subject. People have beliefs around food that are sometimes as strong as some of their other strong beliefs and matters of faith, let's say. So we're going to get into the real food diet and life performance nutrition, which means there's no one size fits all here. We have intuitive eating is the cornerstone, and learning to eat for our particular age and stage of life and what our particular goals are. Exploring what it means to eat the good things that Allah has provided. So when the Quran says to eat what's the pure things and the good things that Allah has provided, what does that second part mean exactly? Like, I feel like we combine it. Like, both of those just mean halal. Is this halal? Yes. Is it good for me? It doesn't matter. I don't think so. So I want to kind of get into that a little bit, and bringing it all together, how to carry it forward, and the final Q&A. So that's the flow of the masterclass, and I'm super excited about it.
Awesome. And also there is an option to, for those who take the masterclass, they can also upgrade to do a boot camp, a 10-day boot camp. Can you just walk us through what is that 10-day bootcamp and who's it for and how will it work?
Yeah, it's a virtual retreat. So we're going to meet for 10 days straight. So we'll have a 3-day break after the masterclass, and then 3 days later we're gonna come back and meet every single day for 10 days straight, where everything we just talked about, which you'll go through some stuff during the 4 weeks, but if you do that plus a 10-day immersion where there is no break, because like during week number 2 or 3 or whatever, you might be like, well, Richard issued some assignments and I did it twice this week. No, we're going to do it every day. There's going to be a gut reset. There's going to be daily breath work. And I'm not going to be bringing out sound baths and it's not going to be like that. No, I'm not knocking that. But what I'm saying is we're going to make sure that we downregulate our nervous system every day together. Whether we do that before the movement or after the movement will depend on the nature of the movement that day, because every single day there will be mobility. We are going to come out of that 10 days being able to move our joints in their full range of motion from head to toe, inshallah. And we're going to do some resistance work safely, effectively, with good programming, not just like I've heard I need to do 4 squats between 8 to 12 reps. 4 sets between 8 to 12 reps of squats and 4 sets of 8 to 12 reps of push-ups. And I mean, we're going to really work we're going to go through a program that you could then take afterwards and just kind of live by it, maybe scaling up as you get stronger and more efficient with the movement patterns. And of course, I'm going to have some sleep hygiene assignments, recommendations. That's the only one I can't force you to do. The rest of them, you're going to kind of be there with me more or less, except for the food one, but anyways, the sleep one is going to be on the individual to adhere to. But yeah, after the end of the 10 days, we, from the mindfulness to the movement, to the nutrition and to the recovery, we should be very well reset.
Awesome, mashallah. And I love that the timing of this Wellness Masterclass is just the start of the new Hijri year, the 1444. So talk about New Year's Hijri resolutions. This is a great time for those of you who wanted always to reset themselves. And also, like I said, I think it's the recognition, realization that, if you're somebody who's stressed and who's not these days, to be honest, learning these techniques and tools that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed us with, and learning from someone like Richard, who alhamdulillah has delved deep into this, and Allah is blessed with Islam and has been able to connect it to our faith, is you're getting literally you're getting like decades of research in a matter of 4 weeks. And I will say that this is a gift that a lot of us need to appreciate, and we're blessed to have people like Richard in our community who are sharing this knowledge and giving practical and giving us the time. For those who don't know, Richard is involved in some major projects here in Saudi Arabia, but he still makes time for this sort of work and work with our community. That's why we're so honored to have him. And honestly speaking, if you have the chance and the ability to join, I would highly recommend. And there's some amazing testimonials from previous students, including doctors and nurses and people who you'd assume that they would know how to work with their bodies, but they're like, whoa, this was a complete shift in understanding and mindset, and it made a difference in my life. And really recommend you to go watch those short data. So here's how it works. Like I said, the first session starts this Sunday at 9 a.m. US Central Time. You can look up the exact time to your location wherever in the world. You are recommended to attend 2 live online sessions. Now, if for any reason you missed the live sessions, the live sessions will go up in our learning portal within 48 hours. But I always recommend to go live because you can ask questions, you can interact with Richard, you can interact with your cohort and get to know them. A lot of times the community that forms around each masterclass is the fun part. And then there'll be there'll be teaching session, 1 teaching session each week on Sundays, and 1 working session. The teaching session is when more Richard goes over like slides and kind of explain the theory and the frameworks, and the working sessions is when he's actually basically working through some of the stuff he's sharing, basically, and how it goes. There are 2 versions of this masterclass for those who want to sign up. There is an essential edition, so this is like the masterclass only. So you get the 8 live sessions, the 4 teaching sessions, and the 4 working sessions. You get Q&A time, and one thing Richard is known for, he's extremely generous with his time. rush off after this session. He's there. He answers your questions fully. There's a private online discussion forum. You can ask questions in between sessions. And the beautiful thing, and alumni love this, every time you sign up for the Wellness Masterclass, you attend the next one for free. However many times you do it. So let's say Charlotte, Richard does this again. In the future, you can rejoin for free for future cohorts. You can always come back and kind of revise with Richard. And there is a money back guarantee. So you can join us, for money back guarantee. If you don't like it, you can always ask for money back shot either. The payment is $597 or 3 monthly payments of $199. Now, for those of you who want the boot camp, you can also add the boot camp to yourself. Again, the boot camp is a lot more intense. You get the 4 week of essential, same thing in the essential edition. The only difference is you get that 10-day online boot camp, a 10-day retreat where you work with Richard to actually create that reset in your life. So you can sign up for these shot either on the link I put in the chat, productivist.com/wellness, and really start your journey towards your best self shout either. So a few questions here, Richard. So a question from Firida. Can this program be useful for teens? What are your thoughts? Is there age limit or age recommendation for this program?
I would, maybe not an age limit, maybe an age limit, but definitely not for teens. I think that this is the first time anyone's ever asked this. And I really think that it's absolutely amazing for teens, to be honest. Like if the teen is interested, of course, sometimes bringing somebody who's like, oh no, I have to go, get involved in something I don't want to get into and all that. And that could be maybe they'd enjoy it, but that could be initially a stressor in the beginning. But yeah, like learning these things about mindfulness, breath work, and nutrition and movement, and hearing these messages about sleep. I mean, who's under? I'll be 48 very soon, and I consider myself lucky to have grown up at the time period that I grew up, because I know what's not looking good that's happening to the younger generation, and I really feel for them. Like, it is the fact that there are 6 and 7-year-olds who, when they go down into a squat, that every child usually was able to just go down into that sort of child-looking squat. A lot of 7-year-olds now, their posture's so rounded forward, and their heels come up because of how much time they're spending on devices, and also how much time the schools are sitting them down. Like the fitness levels in the schools are not good anymore. And then the food and the lights, they're shining in their eyes up until sleep time. Like, I do think that the teens need to hear this very much, maybe more than some of the rest of us. But no, all of us could use it and benefit from it, but teens definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, and I also recommend that like I said, it's learn. The earlier you learn this stuff, the better. Definitely. The other one is when is the next Wellness Masterclass? We not sure. Again, sometimes with Richard, again, as I said, he's a very busy man, and we cannot guarantee sort of when the next one will be. So if you're able to join now, I recommend you join now, just to be able to secure a spot, get in the program. If for any reason you cannot attend all the live sessions, for any reason, again, you can attend the live, you can attend a recorded one. And then if, of course, we do them later in next year or this year, you're more than welcome to rejoin for free, basically. So that's always our recommendation. Cannot guarantee the next one because of just the scheduling and Richard being involved in many things shot item. Any questions we have before we wrap up? I don't want to keep you all going for too long. Any questions about the Wellness Masterclass that before we wrap up? So again, just to summarize for those who joined us a bit late, that we are here sharing about the importance of wellness to handle stress, to recognize the link between stress and health. Number 2, recognize that there are things we're doing to our bodies that are actually creating stress. Number 3, there are tools Allah blessed us with, where there's breathing and walking and fasting and exposing ourselves to sometimes some extreme temperatures within reason safely, that help us deal with stress. And it's important to tap into those tools, and that builds your resilience, and that builds your resilience to be able to deal with some of the onslaught of stress. And really, I was talking to Richard yesterday. I said it's kind of like knowing these tools, just by knowing about them and acting some of them, puts you on almost like unfair advantage, because people are struggling. And the fact that you are able to handle a stress through breath work, or through fasting, or through prayer, or through sleeping patterns, or through sleep hygiene, just knowing and acting upon some of this really I feel like it's such a blessing that we have this opportunity to learn. And so if you're able to, again, I cannot stress how important this is to make it work, inshallah. Any final questions before we wrap up? And maybe Richard, any final thoughts before we wrap up, inshallah?
Of course, if there are any final questions, let me know. But yeah, just kind of really build on what you just said. Like, we're talking about stress, which means we're talking about balance or being knocked out of balance. And that is not, it's sort of what's underlying everything. Like, even the chronic illnesses that are plaguing the world today from a health standpoint, unrelated to, we're not talking about the mental side. We're talking about the diabetes, the lipid issues, the blood pressure, the cardiovascular diseases, a lot of the mental degenerative diseases, and all of these things that are considered to fall into the spectrum of chronic illness are a result of being out of balance, right? So it's still a result of an accumulation of stressors, right? So in general, I know that there are reasons why there are other reasons too, right? But they estimate 75%, and some say that that's being generous. 75% of all these chronic illnesses are lifestyle-based diseases, but what's causing them is us being out of balance, okay? Out of balance in all the ways we talked about. So I just wanted to drive that home. This is not just about feeling better mentally. It's about feeling better physically and spiritually, and living this life, inshallah, to the end, without suffering and medicating our way through it, showing up as our best self more often than not, so that we can apply ourselves to our purpose here, which is to worship and adore and connect to Allah, which is hard to do that as well as everything else when you're not feeling well. And I encourage everybody, if you sign up, which I hope you do, I'd love to see you all there, come with a beginner's mindset and come ready to slow down, because this is not about, like, hey, we were told haste is from shaitan, right? So a lot of the haste that we're in is what's also knocking us off balance. So we're going to bring it back to the fundamentals, and I'm going to put the fun in fundamental.
All right, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much, Richard, and thank you for everyone joining us live. Hope you found this useful, and see some of you inshallah in the upcoming masterclass. Barakallah fikum. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.